I'm going to be introducing Professor Emmanuel Echepon. Professor Emmanuel joined Harvard faculty at Harvard upon receiving his PhD in African history from the University of Virginia in 1993. He received his master's degree at Wake Forest University in North Carolina in 1989, where he concentrated on English labor history, and his bachelor's degree in history and religions from the University of Ghana in 1984. Please welcome Professor Emmanuel Echepon.
Good morning, everyone. Okay, let's do it again. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Much better. His Excellency, Vice President Dr. Mahamadu Bawumia, honorable ministers, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor to welcome you all to the 11th Annual African Development Conference. My name is Emmanuel Echepon. I'm the Oppenheimer Faculty Director of the Center for African Studies and the Ellen Getty Professor of History and of African and African American Studies at Harvard. I'm delighted to be here today as a proud supporter of the African Development Conference, which has been tirelessly organized by student leaders across the Harvard Kennedy School of Government and the Harvard Law School. As we gather here after a 2-year hiatus, we are reminded of the significant role that Africa plays in the global community. This year's theme, Reimagining Africa's Growth on Our Terms, is an inspiring call to action that challenges us to embrace our creativity as we discuss the issues that are most pressing to Africa's development. Africa has always been a continent of immense potential and possibilities, with a rich cultural heritage, diverse natural resources, and a vibrant and youthful population. Amidst significant challenges, our aim is to gather the brightest minds to strengthen Africa's voice and identify unique opportunities to reposition the continent as a partner of choice in the global market. Today we have the privilege of hosting an incredible lineup of distinguished speakers, including the Vice President of Ghana, His Excellency Dr. Mahamadu Bawumia. We also have the pleasure of hosting several ministers and other high-ranking officials and business leaders from across the African continent who have come together to engage in critical conversations about Africa's growth and development. Your presence and insights are invaluable as we work to build both upon successes and reimagine growth pathways in our discussions over the next 2 days. We will discuss the leadership that Africa needs, explore how we can promote the advancement of talent, and draw inspiration from the rest of the world. We will also discuss how to achieve inclusive growth through opening borders, fostering trade and competition, and intra-African trade. We will delve into the intersection of sports, arts, and culture in Africa's development. In addition to a dedicated panel, we are thrilled to have an artist generate a live painting at our reception tonight, which will be auctioned tomorrow to support local artists and future transformative events. We believe that investing in the arts and culture sector is essential for unlocking Africa's creative potential and driving economic growth. Ultimately, this conference will focus on the solutions and sectors that can drive action, progress, and prosperity for a sustainable future. At the Harvard Center for African Studies, we are committed to broadening knowledge about Africa and bringing Africa perspectives to bear on the scholarship of the Harvard community and beyond, We are proud supporters of this conference and have supported Harvard's student-led Africa-focused events for many years. While the conversations and new connections begin this weekend, the work is ongoing. As we embark on this journey together, I challenge you to let your imaginations explore new horizons. Let's embrace the creativity and innovation that has always been at the heart of Africa's success and use it to build a brighter future. Once again, let me express my deepest gratitude to the student leaders who put this extraordinary conference together. The Africa Caucus, the Harvard Africa Law Association, and the Business and Government Professional Interest Council, and the Africa Policy Journal, a student publication, student organizations at the Kennedy and the law schools. To our special guests, distinguished speakers, students, faculty, friends, and all of you present here today, we warmly welcome you again. Your participation and contributions are greatly appreciated, and I look forward to a fruitful and inspiring conference. Thank you. Before I introduce our special guest and keynote speaker for today, allow me to introduce my colleague and good friend, Mr. Hakeem Bello-Sagi, who will be moderating the conversations during the fireside chat. Hakeem Bello-Sagi is a senior lecturer of business administration at the Harvard Business School. An accomplished Nigerian professional and entrepreneur, Hakeem earned a degree in political philosophy and economics from Oxford University, a law degree from Cambridge University, and an MBA from the Harvard Business School. He is the chairman of the board of FSDH Holding Company Limited, which includes among its holdings a merchant bank, an asset assessment company, a pension fund administration company, and a securities trading company. Hakeem also chairs the board of Chocolate City Group, a leading entertainment conglomerate in Nigeria, and he is the main stakeholder and chairman of the board of Duval Properties Limited, a real estate company engaged in mixed-use development in Abuja, Nigeria. He was recently appointed an expert global advisor and member of the International Advisory Group of Equinor, the Norwegian energy company previously known as Statoil. More recently, in recognition of his role in bringing the United Arab Emirates telecommunications firm, Etisalat, to Nigeria, Mr. Bello-Sagi won the Telecom Entrepreneur of the Year award at the 10th Annual Nigerian Telecoms Awards. A successful entrepreneur and businessman, Mr. Bello-Sagi has been a key player in the Nigerian economy for over 3 decades through his participation and development of several businesses in the private sector, particularly in energy, finance, and telecommunications. An advocate of higher education, Mr. Bello-Sagi is a member of the Harvard University Global Advisory Council. He was a founding member of the advisory board of the Harvard Center for African Studies, and he and his wife, Maima, endowed the Hakeem and Maima Bello-Sagi Distinguished African Entrepreneurship Lecture Series. Hakeem has been a member of the HBS community for many years, and currently as a senior lecturer, he is the faculty lead for the Field Global Immersion Program to be held in Accra. So welcome, my good friend. I now have the distinguished honor of introducing and welcoming our guest speaker for today. Dr. Mahamadu Bawumia is the Vice President of the Republic of Ghana. He chairs the Economic Management Team, which is broadly responsible for shaping the government's policies and guiding its implementation. He is at the forefront of a broad, inclusive development strategy in Ghana, involving, among others, the leveraging of digitized government services to transform the delivery of public services and digitalizing the economy, with an overall objective of building Ghana's digital economy. His efforts have seen the ongoing infusion of technological innovation in everyday Ghanaian life and the rapid growth of the fintech industry in the country. Dr. Bawumia holds a Bachelor of Science degree in economics from Buckingham University in the United Kingdom, a Master of Science degree in development economics from Oxford University in the UK, and a PhD in economics from Simon Fraser University in Canada. He has held academic positions as Assistant Professor of Economics at Baylor University in the US, as a visiting scholar at the University of British Columbia in Canada, and a visiting Senior Research Associate at the Center for the Study of African Economies at Oxford University in the UK. He has also served as visiting Professor of Economic Governance at Central University in Ghana. As an economist and banker, Dr. Bawumia has had a prestigious career, which includes serving as the Deputy Governor of Ghana Central Bank from 2006 to 2008, and the resident representative of the African Development Bank in Zimbabwe in 2011. He has authored several journal articles and has numerous publications to his credit, including my favorite, Monetary Policy and the Financial Sector Reform in Africa, Ghana's Experience. Please join me in welcoming the Vice President of the Republic of Ghana.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that very kind introduction. Let me stand on existing protocols. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Let me congratulate the conveners of the African Development Conference, the African students at Harvard Kennedy School of Government and the Harvard Law School for their sterling work in creating this inspiring environment to discuss the future of Africa on the global market. This is an important gathering of some of the brightest minds and most committed individuals from across Africa and beyond. The broader theme of this conference, Reimagining Africa's Growth in Our Own Terms, is both timely and appropriate. For too long, Africa has been defined by external forces and influences, with little say in the direction of our own growth and development. We have been told what to do and how to do it, with little regard to our unique histories, cultures, and aspirations. As a continent, we have endured 400 years of slavery with devastating consequences for our economic growth and development. We've also endured some 75 years of colonialism following the Berlin conferences, where Africa was carved up amongst the European powers of Britain, Germany, France, Spain, Greece, Italy, Belgium, and Portugal. The economic systems implemented by the colonizers in our countries were primarily designed to serve the economic interests of these countries and not the colonies. The development of Africa in this period, of course, was not on our terms. But today, at this conference, we are taking a different approach. We are thinking about reimagining our growth on our terms with a clear vision of what we want to achieve and how we want to get there. We are embracing our diversity, creativity, and resilience, and charting our own path towards a more prosperous and inclusive future. At the heart of this vision is the transformative power of technology. We know that technology is a powerful tool to drive innovation and competitiveness in all sectors of the economy, and we are determined to leverage this tool to its fullest potential. By 2050, 1 in 5 Africans, 1 in 5 people in the world will be on the continent of Africa. Africa will also have the largest youth population in the world. Imagine all of these people are healthy, educated, and productive. Imagine the economic effect of their aggregate demand and their cultural and creative influence and power. Imagine the influence of African music and the arts and general contribution to everything. This is why reimagining Africa's growth on our terms is very timely and exciting. I have no doubt that if we chart the course to fix our problems on the continent, it will translate into acquiring the voice and the space we desire at the global table. So far, our failure to fix problems at home have made it easy for others to deny us the right voice and place, and even constitutes an unjustified excuse for others to look down on Africans everywhere. These and many reasons are why we absolutely need to fix our local issues urgently. To do this effectively, Africa must deliberately figure out and chart its own course and make sure we get it right this time. For many centuries, Africa has been at the receiving end of other people's ideas and dreams for us. When it comes to reimagining Africa, my imagination simply settles on Africa as a co-equal with other continents in the management of the affairs of humanity. An Africa which is in charge of its own issues and destiny and is respected for what it brings to the table, which is a lot. We should leave behind the Africa which is called to the table and told what to do, when indeed it is a major provider for everyone else, even though it is not rewarded appropriately. We should leave behind the Africa which is descended upon by others, dug up everywhere, and the treasures in its bowels ripped out and shipped off raw to power other people's development, who then turn around and treat us as a basket case only fit for charity. I imagine Africa at a place where it can assert its true power for the benefit of its people and their dignity wherever they may be, in or out of the continent. Ladies and gentlemen, after a careful assessment of our collective progress so far since independence as African nations, what is clear to me is that many African countries are trying to grow and develop with very inefficient underlying systems that do not provide sufficient micro-foundation to underpin sustainable growth and development. The operative underlying systems in many African countries are characterized by elements including a highly informal economy. The colonial powers were only interested in the formalization of their economies to the extent that it furthered their objective of maximizing resource exploitation of the African continent. Many governments since independence have continued with and entrenched the status quo, and this has resulted in the exclusion of the vast majority of the population for the benefit of the elite. Another characteristic of the underlying inefficient systems is that for many countries, there is no unique identification for the population. In addition, our citizens are not properly and uniquely identified for many countries. It was possible, or it is possible, to be born in a country in Africa, live a full life, die, and be buried, and there will be no trace of you on the documentation that you ever lived and died in the country. The poor mostly suffer from this type of exclusion. Many countries do not have functioning property address systems. Many people take property addresses for granted. But can you imagine what it would be like in the United States of America if the address system suddenly disappeared? Just disappeared. There will be chaos. There will just be complete chaos if you didn't know where to find. You didn't have a working address system. That this is a piece of soft infrastructure that we don't really put a lot of value on, we take for granted. But there would be complete chaos in the economy of any modern country if the address system completely disappeared. But this is what African nations, for the most part since independence, have been living. There haven't been these address systems. The majority of the population in many African countries are excluded from the financial system with no access to bank accounts. The poor and rural folks are even intimidated to step into a bank, to open a bank account. This has a direct impact on financial savings, interest rates, and economic growth. The payment system, another element, in many of our countries is dominated by cash, which makes it very inefficient and not transparent. Additionally, public service delivery in many African countries is largely based on manual systems that are characterized by bureaucracy and corruption. The ports, drivers and vehicle licensing departments, passport acquisition, health insurance, registration and renewal, and so on. The quest for public services are very frustrating processes for our citizens. There is, for many countries, a disconnect between government, the government machinery, and the lives of ordinary people. This underlying system frustrates rather than helps ordinary people. The majority of the population, another characteristic, is not identified for tax purposes. In Ghana, for example, as of 2017, only 4% of the adult population had tax identification numbers. Just 4% had tax identification numbers. And therefore, you can't tell who has filed their taxes or who has not filed their taxes. And of course, the population knows this. Without a property address system, the collection of property taxes is also problematic. You do not have the data to tell which properties have paid property taxes, and in this case, for many countries on the continent, that is the case. So how can you mobilize domestic revenue in these circumstances? The manual systems and the lack of integration of existing databases has resulted in a proliferation of fake documentation, whether it's birth certificates, insurance stickers, vehicle registrations, driver's licenses, land title certificates, and so on. There is therefore constant suspicion around documentation, and a deficit of trust results, which makes the cost of doing business very high. The lack of identification also allows ghost names on government payrolls in many countries. Many African countries also do not have a working system of credit reference agencies to provide credit reports and scores on individuals and businesses to lenders. They don't have the data, because you need the data to be able to do such credit scoring. They don't have the data required to provide the credit reports. The potential for borrowers to abscond in that circumstance is very high, and therefore the cost of credit is high, and we face many high interest rates for lending. We, ladies and gentlemen, we have lived with these problems for over 60 years since independence. Nobody or institution has insisted over the years that we must have unique identity, property address systems, financial inclusion, and so on, as a prerequisite for economic growth and development. We've gone through many IMF programs, World Bank programs, and so on. But there has never been an insistence that this is a requisite. Well, there is an insistence that you have to increase taxes or whatever. But have a unique identity, have an address system, have financial inclusion. Those underlying micro foundations, we've never really been told. But why, of course, should you be told? The international development game is a competitive game. And if you go for a football match and you decide not to have a goalkeeper, your opponents are not going to tell you that you should bring in a goalkeeper. They'll keep scoring until you figure out that you need a goalkeeper. And that is where we are. African countries, ladies and gentlemen, made the mistake after independence continuing to rely on natural resources as the colonial powers did, instead of human resources for our development. The reliance on primary commodities has made African countries vulnerable to external shocks. As a result, the focus of economic management by successive African governments since independence has been on crisis management, as a result of factors such as the collapse in commodity prices, increase in oil prices, debt unsustainability, macroeconomic instability, and so on. Governments are by and large not focused on the underlying system that underpins economic activities and economic growth. Our focus has always been on managing crisis of one nature or the other. The reality, ladies and gentlemen, is that African countries have been trying to transform their economies without data and such transparent systems. That is really the reality. Governments are taking critical decisions without being informed by the data, because the systems that are underpinning the economies are not generating the data for decision making. So when our government assumed office in 2017, we made the ambitious decision to address all of these problems of the lack of unique identity, address systems, and so on, immediately and simultaneously. The question was, what is the best way to do it? Our decision was to quickly transform our economy by leveraging on technological innovations as a means to leapfrog the development process, overcome legacy problems, and provide both economic and public sector governance. We chose digitalization as the vehicle, and this is why digitalization has been a major area of focus for our government. If data is the new oil, then digitalization is the most effective and cost-efficient vehicle for generating the data. Now let me delve into the key areas of transformation that have been critical to Ghana's digital journey. We had to quickly address the issue of unique identification numbers for the population, and the introduction of a biometric national identification system in Ghana has been a game changer in several ways. Thus far, more than 17 million people, over 80% of the targeted adult population, have been enrolled in a secure national database. With the Ghana card, which is the national ID in Ghana, the identity of people, even dead people, can be established using their fingerprints. This is one of the most transformational projects implemented under digitalization. With this, we have solved the problem of providing unique identity to our population, a problem we have lived with since independence, over some 66 years ago. We have also started a pilot, ladies and gentlemen, and will likely roll out a nationwide system of providing national ID numbers to children at birth from June this year. The absence of an address system resulted in a landmark address system. We were addressing by landmarks, right? So, pass the big tree, turn right at the blue house, the woman selling cocoa on the left, take the left there, and we will betides you, the woman doesn't appear that day. To solve the problem of the lack of a working address system in Ghana, we have leveraged on GPS technology to implement a digital address system for Ghana covering every square inch of Ghana, every square inch of land or water. In the process, we have identified and provided unique addresses for some 8.5 million properties in Ghana, along with street names and numbers. And these are being rolled out as we speak. This new system has made it easier for businesses to locate their customers and vice versa, and for emergency services to quickly respond to calls. Additionally, it has made it easier for the government to identify properties. We have therefore solved a major problem that we have lived with since independence through digital technology. Because once we've completed the work, every place was properly identified. Ladies and gentlemen, as I said, one of the biggest problems that was impeding financial sector development in Ghana is the issue of financial exclusion. This means that most of the population is excluded from fully participating in the financial system because they are unable to open and operate bank and other financial services accounts. And this reinforces the dominance of cash payments. As of 2017, the data showed that about 70% of people in Ghana had no bank accounts. About 80% of the adult population had mobile phones, with 16 million active mobile money accounts. It was also not possible to send two customers money from one telco to another. They are not interoperable. So, we ask the following questions. Why can't we make it possible to send mobile money across different mobile money services? And also, and most importantly, why can't the mobile money account function like a bank account by making it interoperable with bank accounts? This was a major question we had to ask, because the majority of our people were very happy with mobile money accounts and mobile money. But many of them will not step into a bank. So the question is, how do we make the mobile money account interoperable with the bank account? And we had to find a technical solution for that. I mean, it had not been done not in Africa and not anywhere in the world that I was aware of. But we set ourselves the task to do exactly that. The answer to these questions was the implementation of the groundbreaking mobile money interoperability system. The mobile money payments interoperability has made it possible to transfer money seamlessly across different mobile money providers and between bank accounts and mobile wallets. And in doing so, we've provided mobile money wallets the functionality of traditional bank accounts. And as a result of mobile money interoperability, Ghana now is the fastest growing mobile money market in Africa. And as I said, as far as I know, Ghana is the first country in the world, and certainly the first in Africa, to achieve this type of interoperability between bank accounts and mobile wallets. Today, the payment system reform that we have put in place has made it very easy to open a traditional bank account. For many banks, anyone can now open a traditional bank account remotely through their mobile phones without visiting the branch or filling out the forms. Clients only need a valid national ID card and no additional information is required because all the information is in the card. So once you want to open a bank account, you dial a USSD code, you put in your national ID card number, and your bank account is open right there and then, because the bank has all the KYC information they need on your Ghana card. So we have put the fintechs, the banks, and the telcos on a common platform, and this has therefore helped Ghana in the context of access to financial inclusion. Our country now is the #1 in Africa when it comes to access to financial inclusion. Through digital technology, we have therefore practically solved the problem of access to financial inclusion, a problem again that we have lived with since independence. The digital payments infrastructure is boosting e-commerce in Ghana. Businesses are booming over in the Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and so on. Many people who could not afford to rent or build shops are able to do business on the internet at little cost, with deliveries helped by digital addresses and payments using mobile money interoperability. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, in the area of domestic revenue mobilization, Ghana has a major challenge in the area of domestic revenue mobilization. The tax to GDP ratio is about 14% compared to about 34% for the OECD countries. Most adults, as I have noted, are outside the tax net and compliance is very low. In order to increase the number of people with tax identification numbers, as I told you, when we came in 2017, only 4% of the adult population had tax identification numbers, 4%. So to increase the population with tax identification numbers, we just took a simple decision. We said, well, the population by and large has national ID numbers, which we have issued, and we have about 17 million so far of the adult population, about 18% of the adult population. Now, if we just convert the national ID number to become your tax identification number, then we capture what we need. And that is exactly the decision we took. We just said, look, let's make the tax identification number the national ID number. And just that simple policy, right, suddenly increased the number of adults with tax identification numbers from 4% to 86% overnight. Just like that. Overnight. And so this is the power of digital technology and making some of these decisions. Of course, it's one thing to have 86% with tax identification numbers. It's another thing to get them to pay. that is the challenge. But to get them to pay, you have to make it easier for them to pay and try to get compliance. So a few weeks ago, we made it easy for the 86% of people with tax identification numbers to first of all check their tax compliance status. So you can dial a USSD code and see where you are. Are you complying with taxes? How much do you have to pay or not? So that has now been implemented. You can also file your taxes now on your mobile phone. You don't need to go to the tax office and go through the hassle of getting the forms and the complications of filling and all. You can do that on your mobile phone. And thirdly, you can apply for and obtain a tax clearance certificate on your mobile phone. So we issued this package a couple of weeks ago, and this should help the 86%. But the good thing is that today, the tax authorities know who has filed and who has not filed. That information they did not have. And more importantly, they also know where they live. Because to get your national ID card, we require that you provide your digital address. So we have a complete database of where you live and on all of that, your phone number. So I think they now have a sort of hold on how to get people who haven't paid. So that is, I think, some progress. So we expect that this will enhance domestic revenue mobilization and ultimately help us reduce fiscal deficits and debt and increase economic growth. Of course, we've also, because of the digital addresses that we have and mobile money interoperability and unique ID and so on, we have also now implemented a common platform, a digital platform for property taxation. Because we now have detailed data on 8.5 million properties. The database now exists because of the digital addresses. So we can now tell also which properties have paid taxes and which haven't. When we started this process, only 9% of properties paid taxes, just 9%. Right? So there's a whole lot of properties which were not. But we could not, of course, tell which paid and which didn't. There was no data. So now we have the data, and this new unified common platform for property taxation is now just being rolled out. And I think it should help increase domestic revenue mobilization. Then we had to tackle public service delivery and corruption, which was a major problem. Our approach to improving the delivery of public services is to minimize human contact as much as possible. Therefore, we embarked on an aggressive digitalization of the processes of public service delivery across many institutions with coordination from my office. So far, we have digitized the passport office, so you can apply for your passport online. You don't have to go and pay anybody a bribe to get it. You can go online on your mobile phone or wherever and apply for it. We've digitized operations at the ports. It's a paperless port system, and that has really reduced corruption in the ports. We've digitized the process of obtaining a driver's license or registering a vehicle, and that again has eliminated a lot of middlemen who were there. I mean, there were no middle women, it was only the men who dominated that particular industry. Now we have digitized the motor insurance database. So we have implemented a motor insurance database where we have all the information relating to the insurance status of any vehicle. So on your mobile phone, if you see any car in Ghana, you can just enter a USSD code and tell whether that car is insured or not. And the police can also do that. So it's made it much easier for the police to accurately. So even if you have a fake insurance sticker, you'll be found out very quickly. They don't rely on insurance stickers anymore. They'll be able to do so. One of the interesting cases, which is very recent, and in fact many Ghanaians are yet to discover the extent of this, we sent in a team into the electricity company of Ghana because we had a major problem. You know, you sell electricity and you are making losses. It was so when I looked at the data, I found out it was very, very interesting. The revenues for the last 6 years were almost an identical amount. I mean, the same amount every month. They didn't even take their time to change it a little. So we sent in a team to go and look at what was going on at it. And thankfully we had new management which was also very excited. So the team went in to take a look and look at what was going on. And what they found was really problematic. Because there was just rampant theft that was going on at the company by the IT people. They were the only people who fixed this thing. So the implementation, we have had to implement a new digital architecture and cashless payments. Now you can only pay for electricity cash. That's why you have the mobile money, so you don't need to pay cash anymore. So the new architecture is cashless in payments, and we discovered that at least 30% of the revenue of this company was being stolen. That's a massive amount when you consider the size of the business. And so there are some people who have been arrested for that. In fact, when we got close to finding what was going on, they put in ransomware and virtually, we had a problem. The system froze, but thankfully we were able to do it. But this tells you what the power of digitalization can do and bring out the data and moving away from cash payments to cashless payments has done that. To make it easy to access government services, government has launched the Ghana.gov portal, which is a one-stop shop for accessing government services, and all government institutions are expected to be on the Ghana.gov portal by the end of this year. We've pretty much got close to 85% or so of institutions now on the portal, and we are working on the rest. And this means that you should be able to apply and obtain government services online through the Ghana.gov platform. The key, ladies and gentlemen, to building a database economy is not only in generating the data, but it's more important that the data does not sit in silos. The data should be integrated, and this is the problem that currently exists in many advanced economies where you have data that is sitting in silos. And we want to make sure that we don't fall into that particular trap. And Ghana has an opportunity coming late into the game to integrate the databases that we have generated from the ongoing digitalization process. So in this regard, the National ID database is being integrated with the passport database, with the Social Security database, with the National Health Insurance, with the Ghana Revenue Authority, driver's vehicle license, the SIM cards, mobile money accounts, and so on. We are integrating all the databases, and so that you can use one unique source of truth to see what is happening across the databases. So it's a very interesting, including births of deaths, police, CID, and so on. And the integration of these databases will bring transparency, discipline, and efficiency into our economy and society, and also help law enforcement track down criminals. With the proper protection of privacy as provided by the Data Protection Act, employers should be able to do an online criminal background check on prospective employees, for example. The system we are building, ladies and gentlemen, will make it easier for individuals and businesses to obtain loans because it provides lenders sufficient information about borrowers. Banks also know that the borrower cannot just disappear in the system. The system will also help reduce interest rates on loans because it will make Credit Reference Bureau more effective and allow banks to distinguish the risk levels of various borrowers. And this ultimately should increase economic growth. Ladies and gentlemen, in many parts of Africa, we're coming to our use of drones. Hospitals and clinics in remote and largely rural communities have difficulty in getting medical supplies, especially in times of emergencies, involving, for example, childbirth, snake bites, floods, and so on. Many lives are needlessly lost because the hospitals are unable to access critically needed supplies on time. To address this problem, Ghana opted to partner a Silicon Valley firm called Zipline, which is the world's largest automated on-demand delivery service for medical supplies. I went to Silicon Valley, I led a team there, and we're very, very impressed with Zipline. And particularly, we saw how it could really help with drones delivering these supplies to the rural and remote areas where you could really save a lot of lives. So we got them to come to Ghana, and it has been phenomenal so far. I mean, during COVID, for example, about 9 million vaccines were delivered by drones to areas which were quite remote and rural, and they are saving lives every day. And we have seen very, very important implications. So these are just some of the things that we are doing in Ghana in the digitalization space and solving problems that we've lived with for over 60 years. And these problems are being solved in a very short period of time because we are leapfrogging through digital technology. And that is the power of digital. One of the biggest challenges, ladies and gentlemen, we face is ensuring that the benefits of digital transformation are equitably distributed across all segments of society. We are conscious that not all Ghanaians have equal access to digital technologies, and we are taking steps to bridge this digital divide. Internet penetration in Ghana is about 53%, and our goal should be to get about 90% internet penetration at least. And this we intend to achieve through using satellite technology as well as the allocation of 5G spectrum. There is also the issue of affordability of broadband for the vast majority of the population, which we have to tackle. Another challenge is the need for continued investment in digital infrastructure and skills development. While we've made great strides in these areas, there's still much work to be done. We must invest in expanding access to reliable and affordable broadband and training and education programs to ensure that Ghanaians are equipped with the skills necessary to thrive in the digital economy. Furthermore, we must also address the issue of cybersecurity. As we become increasingly reliant on digital technology, the risk of cyber attacks and data breaches becomes even more important. Therefore, we must ensure, as we are doing, that our systems are secure and that we have the capacity to prevent any threats. Finally, we recognize the need for the effective policy and regulatory frameworks to support the digital transformation of our economy. And this includes ensuring that laws and regulations keep pace with technological advancements and promote innovation while protecting citizens' rights. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, to conclude, Africa missed the first industrial revolution, which saw the transition from manual-scale production to mechanized production in agriculture and goods like textiles, mostly powered by steam and coal energy. Then we missed the second industrial revolution, where the widespread use of electricity powered mass production and assembly lines. The third industrial revolution, which was set off by the introduction of computers, also did not see Africa jump on and develop like others. We are now in the fourth industrial revolution, where the technologies have come together in a global network to create the internet, which is the greatest machine ever created by mankind. And using that to also energize tools and equipment to make them smart, to create Internet of Things and artificial intelligence, which have opened up amazing possibilities with no end in sight. AI is a major opportunity for Africa to increase growth and development. I know there's a lot of talk about ChatGPT and all of the dangerous elements that it could involve. But we just have to make sure we direct the use of this as a tool so that we can help our people. Imagine a nurse or a doctor using ChatGPT or a teacher. It just can help them to improve. So I think that we should look at the opportunities and try to maximize them. African governments must ensure that we do not miss out on this opportunity. Establishing an economy with strong digital foundations is the surest way for Africa to take full advantage of this great new world. We must forget about the past and also forget about incremental progress. Just like we skipped landline phones and moved straight to cell phones, just like we skipped universal banking for all and have implemented digital banking systems on mobile phones for our people, which have taken up in the millions. We must build and use digital platforms like we have done and even surpass some developed economies in some areas. We can move ahead in other sectors as well. The advantage Africa has in this area is that we don't have the burden of the legacy systems to worry about. We can just leapfrog. Indeed, we have no choice if we want to reimagine our own development and grow on our own terms, instead of others deciding that we are only fit to be a source of raw materials and migrant labor. We are redefining and reimagining our growth on our own terms. We are not being asked, for example, to do this by the World Bank or the IMF. The truth is that African countries are politically free. While we are politically free, we still have a mindset that is shackled by the experience of 500 years of slavery and colonialism. For the longest time, we have not believed in ourselves. The dominant mindset is one of impossibility. Our generation needs to break the shackles of the impossibility mindset and embrace the mindset of possibility. It is time for us to figure out the best ways to be masters of our destiny, to chart our own path and develop on our own terms. It is possible. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President, for that very powerful speech. I would like to call up Professor Emmanuel again for the fireside chat.
May I at this time invite His Excellency and my colleague, Hakim, to come and take the floor.
Good morning. Just. I would first like to congratulate the Harvard Law School students in particular, and the Harvard School of Government students for putting this conference together. I need to remind people here that 45 years ago, African students at Harvard Law School largely led the creation of the first Harvard University African Students Association. And therefore, coming back to Harvard Law School and seeing that the law school students are as active as ever is for me emotionally satisfying and makes me very happy. My wife, at that session, was elected organizing and social secretary of the association. I was elected treasurer, and 2 years later, we got married. I'd also like to recall my first encounter with the Bawumia family. He is totally unaware of this. Several years ago, I was invited to speak by the Africa Society at Yale University. In fact, 2 of us were invited to speak. The first person was a very intelligent, elegantly dressed, and very graceful lady, and she spoke first. She spoke so well that it was with considerable anxiety that I followed as a second speaker. She was Mrs. Bawumia. So when Michael called me yesterday and said that I needed to appear at another conference with another Bawumia, I want you to know I was relieved when he said all I had to do was to ask him questions. I will plunge ahead. And please extend my best regards to your wife. Now, thank you very much for the talk on digitalization. You put it very elegantly, saying that in many respects, data is the new oil. And I want to follow in that vein. It has been said that the exploitation of oil created an unclaimed economy, and that therefore many oil-producing countries achieved very high growth rates, but they did not really contribute to the development of the country. The question I have for you, do you see digitalization and technology being an enclave in the countries of Africa? And do you see that achieving growth without development?
Thank you very much. I think quite the contrary. What we, in fact, are seeing is digitization and digitalization is just breaking down the barriers and making our economies and societies more inclusive. In fact, the whole point is inclusion. And this, so when you look at someone who is in a village who wants to apply for national health insurance, right? In my district, women would go and sleep outside the office for 3 days, not even to apply, but to just renew their national insurance. And this creates a barrier. Today, they no longer need to come to their office. Within a minute or two, they can renew their national insurance on the mobile phone, and that has really seen a major jump in renewals. You see someone wanting to open a bank account, you can just do so on your mobile phone with your national ID without going anywhere, and so on. So the whole idea of digital and digitalization is actually to bring more inclusion. And that is really should be the measure of our success, to make sure it is very inclusive. Yeah.
And have you found the impact on some of the important areas of social welfare, like education, like health?
Yes.
Have you seen the impact in those particular areas?
Yes, very much so. As I said, if you look, for example, at healthcare, what we are doing to start with, which I didn't have time to go into, medical records, the digitalization of medical records is going on very earnestly. And so far, we have the records of almost over 1,000 hospitals that have been digitalized. Definitely all the district hospitals, all the teaching hospitals. So if you are referred from one hospital in the north of the country, like Tamale Teaching Hospital, to a hospital in the south, like Kolebu Teaching Hospital, they don't need to carry your folder to Kolebu Teaching Hospital. They will have all the records. The doctors will have all the records there.
So digitalization is really being very helpful. As I said, you to register for your national health insurance, you can do so. To renew it, you can do so. What we've used with drone technology to deliver medicines and vaccines, blood supplies. So we're thinking that it's very helpful in the health sector. In the education sector, for example, we are providing Wi-Fi to senior high schools, to 13 public universities so far, and then colleges of education. And that is a major tool that they can use to get on the net and get information and so on. So I think that in the area of education also, I think digitalization is going to be very, very helpful for us. Yeah.
I'd like to just keep probing on this point of technology and digitalization, and ask a further question which relates to geopolitics.
Okay.
And that is that increasingly we are seeing a stark divide between the United States and between China.
Yeah.
So, for example, a telecoms company like Huawei that has had a very pervasive impact on infrastructure all over the continent. We see a company like Techno that has produced a lot of handsets at very cheap prices for the African market. It has an impact in opening up the market for low-income people. We see that occurring at the same time as the United States is increasingly taking a view that people might have to choose between China and between the United States, or the West and China. How do you see that impacting the technological process within African nations? And how do you see us choosing between the two?
Thank you very much. I think that we should not get into this joke. Our choice between the US and Canada and China on this matter, our choice should be Africa. Our choice should be Ghana. Well, it's in our interest. We have real problems to solve, and we should focus on solving those problems and not get into, because when the elephants fight, it's the grass that suffers, right? And we don't want to be the grass that is suffering here. But let's know what we are trying to do. One of the good things, and one of the important things I must say is a lot of the digitalization efforts that we are seeing, a lot of it for us is being driven by the private sector and local private sector. A lot of people, because we have very, very smart people in the IT sector. They are coming up, like our digital address system has been developed by a local firm. I was very pleasantly surprised because we had done an international tender trying to look for people, and we thought all the big players would come, but a local firm came in and blew out everybody from the water. And we gave them the opportunity, they did it. National ID, local firm. Mobile money interoperability, local firm. So we are looking at growing our own tech sector and making sure that we don't want to get into this geopolitical game. They can fight, but we are going to go ahead of them if they keep fighting.
If I can take you to another international issue, which I think has an impact on Ghana. Of course, Ghana has been very much in the news as a result of its ongoing discussions with the International Monetary Fund. And of course, there are lots of external shocks that have resulted in the situation that Ghana is in. Notwithstanding what is happening with digitalization, Ghana wants to achieve a certain level of macroeconomic stability. So if you can address the issue of how do you see Ghana achieving that, and do you think that IMF agreement will help or hinder that process?
Thank you very much. I think the whole issue of the IMF in response to the shocks that we have been seeing across the globe since COVID, since Ukraine, and so on, is an issue that, you've seen a continent of about 54 countries and 32 of those countries either now have an IMF program or are negotiating to have an IMF program. So there is that issue. But for my money, we have been to the IMF 16 times, and this will be the 17th time. And I keep making the point that it's the case same with many African countries. You know, Cote d'Ivoire is going to the IMF very soon. I mean, and you know, many other, Rwanda is already there and so on. Many countries are with the IMF. But you will keep going back if you don't address the fundamentals. What is the issue? Your revenue mobilization is weak, right? Relative to the expenditure you want to make. So if you don't put in the particular policies to increase revenue mobilization, you will end up going back to that fund. And that's why I keep saying that the reforms that we are doing through digitalization to help us increase revenue mobilization, because we're doing policy without data. And we wouldn't be successful. And so I see that this could provide us with a path forward, stabilization, increase in foreign exchange resources, and so on. But at the end of the day, the micro foundations have to be sound to underpin the macro that is going on. The IMF will provide us the space that we need to undertake the policy reforms that need to be done. That is fine. But ultimately, the micro foundations, and those are the things that if you look at all the prior actions that they have set for Ghana and many, you wouldn't see any of these micro foundations that I've talked about, the address system, national ID card, and all of that. Make sure everybody has a bank account. Those are the things that will move the economy. Yeah.
Now, I think that we all know that the narrative of a country, of a country is so important. And Ghana has moved from being a country that was once very much the poster child for a very successful economy. And that image has changed over the last couple of months. And for a lot of investors, they may now have some misconceptions about where Ghana is today and where Ghana is going. What would you say to them to correct those impressions?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think that by and large, investors have tended to put African countries in the same sort of basket in terms of analysis. And so the risks premium that they attach to investing in Africa tends to be similar across countries. And you are right, Ghana has had a very golden age where we were a star or performer in many areas. But in the last couple of years, since COVID and all of that, the debt unsustainability that we have seen in the country has resulted in a decline in the macroeconomic performance. But you still see a country that is pursuing major reforms. As I said, for me, I am very optimistic about the future of Ghana with what we are doing. The macro side, as you've seen, inflation is already coming down, the fiscal deficit is coming down, and so on. The macro side, we will get a handle of. This is something that we know how to do. Our president said there when we're in the throes of COVID and having to spend so much money, that we know how to bring back the economy, but we don't know how to bring back lives once we've lost them. And so we're going to spend the money to save lives. And after COVID, we'll know how to fix the economy. And that is what I would like investors to understand, that we know how to restore stability. Inflation went up to 54%, it's 45% now. I expect it to end the year in the 25% range. And you're seeing Ghana, for example, you've seen major, job creation and all of that. We've not had queues for petrol, we've not had layoffs, and so on. There's a huge amount of positivity for Ghana. I'm very optimistic, and I think investors should look at what is happening, and we'll see that Ghana will be coming back and recovering. Yeah.
All right then. Vice President, I just have a question in two parts for you before I close.
Okay.
And that question is it, as I said, it's in two parts. The first is, where do you see the African common market in all of this? At a time at which we are entering into a period of apparent deglobalization, in which the world is going into blocks. Africa, in some ways, is going the opposite direction in that we are trying to become continental. How do you see the future of that? That's the first. The second, more controversial, was that it's a recent discussion that we had at all places at Harvard Business School. Someone's argued that if you looked at the macroeconomic figures for the United States was not printing the dollar. It would have to approach the IMF to sustain its situation. So the question I have for you is that, are you, as a matter of policy, for the continued dollarization of the world, or do you believe that it is in the interests of African countries and Ghana to live in a multi-currency world?
Well, let me take the question. In the past, and these professors have ways to sneak questions upon you. This is good. The issue of the African common market is for us, is non-negotiable. There may be deglobalization in other places, but the other places have reached the levels where they can afford to deglobalize. For Africa, we're creating the largest common market in the world, right? With a $3 trillion economy, right? So we have to, the objectives of the African common market are still very, very important in this world. And we therefore need to form a bloc to allow us to even negotiate on stronger terms with the rest of the world and to allow that trade amongst ourselves. And that is very, very important. I'm very keen on the common air market, for example, in Africa. We need to push. It's one of those things that I would like to see us have a common air market and open skies and so on to drive. So we still have a lot to do on the issue of integration and regional integration, and I think we will move on. The more controversial question on whether we want to see de-dollarization, I really think that economic forces from time to time determine what is the reserve currency of the world, right? And you will use currencies as they support your trade. So from our perspective, we will just continue to use the dollar, we will continue to use gold and whatever currencies that support our trade. It's not coming at it from an ideological perspective, but we are looking at a practical perspective. What works for us? And that's what we're going to do.
Thank you very much. Vice President Bawumia, I'd like to say that in an academic community, it is very encouraging to have you here because in so many countries, there are leaders who have great power, but they do not have much knowledge. And there are so many places in which there are people who have great knowledge, but they have no power. So it is refreshing to have a leader who has both knowledge and power. And that is empowering. And then finally, I would like to say, and I say this to all Ghanaians who are here, and you in particular, that is that I know that Ghana is going through a period right now in which there's a certain sadness about the economic situation, but I'm sure that it will get better. But it is very likely that in the next 2 years, I believe that Ghana is going to do something remarkable in African politics. And it's remarkable because I think you'll be the first African country in which you will have an election, presidential election, in which the two candidates are both likely to come from minority ethnic groups. No other African country has achieved it. And who knows, the person that may emerge may be somebody who's from a minority religion within a minority tribe. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that prophecy.